Chapter 15, Enemy of the State. So, in the UK prison system, you're only supposed to be in solitary for a max of 72 hours before your case gets kicked up to the Home Secretary. That's the rule, anyway. Reality? A whole different story. I've already talked about my first stint in Bedford Prison when I was younger, acting like I had it all under control. You find your crew, you chat, you get through it. There's TV, exercise, a bit of a routine. You make do. But solitary, that's a whole different beast. Being down the block is no joke. When I got done for illegally entering the US, plus the added bonus of death threats, they kept asking if I wanted to be on the numbers, basically in protective custody. But that also meant being lumped in with the worst kind of people. Pervs, pedos, absolute scum. No chance. If the other option was being stuck with hardcore extremists, so be it. I'd take my chances. Call it Luton Pride or whatever. Solitary is a box, a literal box. Think police cell, but meant for short stays, not weeks. Concrete bed with a thin plastic mattress, a toilet. That's it. Once a day you get a shower, a phone call, and a walk in a tiny, windowless metal cage. No sunlight, no normal human contact. It's punishment, plain and simple. The goal? To break you. To push you to the edge without technically torturing you. Some blokes basically live in solitary because they're a threat to everyone, including themselves. You can barely call them human anymore. But before I get into that, I need to give you the bigger picture. What my life outside the EDL had turned into, and how the British state was basically on a mission to take me down. War on Tommy. Look, I've made some dumb choices. Some absolute shockers. I knew a lot of them would end badly, like climbing on top of the FIFA building in Zurich. I mean, what did I expect? A first-class upgrade for the flight home? But some fights are worth the trouble. You take the fine, you do the time in a cell, but at least you've made your point. I'm not trying to play the martyr card. I'm just a bloke who got fed up being like a second-class citizen in my own town, my own country. Someone had to stand up and ask the question, what the hell are we doing? Are we really okay with what's happening? Are we just going to sit back and let it happen? Or are we so deep in denial that we don't even realize it's happening? The second the EDL kicked off, with me as the face of it, the British state went full attack mode. Arrests, detention, tearing apart my business history, throwing me into cells with violent extremists. You name it, they tried it. The plan? Wear me down. Shut me up. Make an example out of me. Show everyone else that no one messes with the system. Yeah, I've pushed my luck. But did I deserve to be locked in a room with 3 violent terrorists who beat me to a pulp? This is supposed to be Britain, right? A civilized country? Yeah, sure. Try saying that when your head's split open and your teeth are scattered across the floor. The stitch up. From the moment the EDL started making waves, the police were on me. Didn't matter what I did, they'd find a way to come knocking. Like the time I got arrested at Luton Airport on my way to Scotland. Apparently, I was being done for criminal damage and a racially aggravated incident. News to me. Turns out they were referring to a 30-pound door fitting that got broken at a hotel after an EDL demo. Yep, 30 quid. But they sent 15 officers from Sheffield all the way to Luton to search my house, my mum's house, and seize everything, including my dad's business computer, over a 30-pound door fitting. Make it make sense. And the best part? They already had a signed statement from the hotel manager before they even raided me, confirming I had nothing to do with it. The cops ignored it, because it was never about a broken door, was it? Then they started playing financial games, money laundering, tax evasion, throwing whatever they could at me. They shut down my bank accounts, froze my money, raided my house with armed police, and even dug up my neighbor's drains. And for what? Nothing. After years of this, every accusation crumbled. But by then, they'd already done the damage. My wife was humiliated, we had to move house multiple times, my business was in ruins. Even my dad got dragged in. Barclays Bank shut down his business and personal accounts with zero explanation. Just like that. Then they slapped me with a spending limit, £250 a week. That was it. No appeals, no hearings. Just pure state oppression. When the trial finally came, I handed them every single bank statement, receipt, and invoice. The judge took one look at the police's case and threw it out. 4 years of stress, harassment, and legal fees, all for nothing. Life inside. After the M25 passport arrest, I got locked up in Wandsworth. Solitary again. The governor straight up told me I'd get killed if they put me on the main wing. So, back in the box I went. No heating, freezing Victorian cell, no TV, no human contact except that when I got dragged in front of the governor once a week for mental health checks. The system wasn't about justice, it was about breaking me. Then, just when I started to settle, they moved me again. Wandsworth, Bedford, solitary. Bedford, Woodhill, solitary. Woodhill, back to Wandsworth, solitary. This wasn't prison. This was a game. A twisted, psychological torture session run by the state. I wasn't some psycho killer. I was in for borrowing a mate's passport, but they treated me like Britain's most wanted. Final straw. During those 22 weeks in solitary, I read the Quran. A Muslim group sent it to me, probably as a joke, but I read it cover to cover. And you know what? Every single thing I'd heard about radical Islam, it was all in there. Hatred towards Jews and Christians? Check. Sex slavery? Check. Beating wives? Check. Killing non-believers? Check. I started calling out the Muslim prisoners. Half of them didn't even know their own religion. One guy, Hobbs, a Jamaican convert, got into a row with me because he refused to believe his own Nant was burning in hell. According to Islam, she would be. They lost their minds. Even the prison imam asked me to chill out. But I wasn't backing down. I started messing with them. Every day, I'd take the newspaper, doodle burqas over all the girls in bikinis, then pass it around to the Muslim lads. They'd act offended, but you just knew they were still looking. By the time I got out, I'd learned one thing. This wasn't just about me. This was about silencing anyone who dared to question the status quo. And I wasn't about to shut up. Locked up, left out, and fighting back. So there I was, weeks turning into months, stuck in solitary, while my fam did everything they could to get someone, anyone, to take my case seriously. Around the 8-week mark, with no light at the end of the tunnel, they started reaching out to human rights lawyers. Every single one of them acted all shocked at first, like, oh my God, that's awful. But the second they clocked who I was, they backpedaled faster than a politician caught lying. One straight up admitted most of their clients were Muslim and repping me would kill their rep. Another dude, the same lawyer who defended John Venables, yeah, the guy who murdered a toddler, refused to even touch my case. So, defending a child killer? Cool. But me? Nah, too controversial. Guess human rights aren't for everyone. At Wandsworth, I had a weekly check-in with the governor, a mental health doc, and some religious rep, sometimes an imam. Even they knew I didn't belong there, but no one wanted to take the heat for moving me. Then a priest dropped by, chatting about special units where they stash snitches. Like, no thanks, bro. I'll rot in here before I go that route. By the time they sent me back to Wandsworth for round 2, I was falling apart. Lost 2 stone, covered in sores, and looking rough. One of the guards, an ex-Royal Marine, sat me down and kept it real. Mate, you need to get out of solitary before it breaks you. It had dried me out, sure, but at that point, it was pushing me over the edge. So I went on hunger strike, just liquids for 7 days, because honestly, it felt like they were deliberately trying to break me. I'd done time before, but this was something else. This was psychological torture, state-sponsored madness. I was ready to snap when, finally, the governor called me in and said I was getting transferred to Wayland, a proper Category C prison with actual facilities. Sounded like an upgrade. Except, plot twist, they threw me straight back in the hole. Solitary. Again. I lost it. This was inhumane. Then there was the visit drama. My fam had a 2-hour slot, but instead of getting me at 11:30 like usual, they left them waiting till 1 p.m. Why? Because Muslim prisoners had their visits first. By the time I got out there, we had 45 minutes left, and I was already fuming. The whole visit was ruined, and it got worse. Every day, one of the Muslim inmates would spit through my cell door flap as he walked past. So I got smart. Covered the flap with paper, gave myself a split second to react. Next time he pulled it open, bam! He got a face full of my piss. Not my proudest moment, but trust me, it was deserved. The screws didn't even punish me for that, just for covering the flap with paper. Loss of privileges, they said. Like what privileges? I had nothing to lose. Meanwhile, my release date came and went. I should have been home, but nope, still stuck in solitary. My family finally found a badass lawyer, a woman from Stokoe Partnership in Manchester, who threatened a judicial review. That's when they finally caved and let me out. Funny how the system only moves when you hit them with legal action. But just as I thought I was catching a break, the state turned up the heat in other ways. At the time the EDL started, we had 7 properties, 1 in my name, 6 in my wife's. When her brother, little Stevie, wanted to buy a place, I lent him £20,000 for his deposit. Just normal family stuff. He bought it, flipped it 6 months later, and made £30,000. The issue? He overstated his income on the mortgage. But let's be real, everyone was doing that back then. No one lost money, no scam, no victims. But the police had been on a mission to take me down, and they saw their chance. They spent hundreds of thousands trying to build a tax case against me. One by one, their 30-odd charges fell apart until they played their trump card. They were going after my wife. She never even handled our finances, but they didn't care. They wanted me. And if that meant dragging her into it, ruining our lives, so be it. I was facing 3 to 5 years over a property deal from 2006, all because the cops wanted to push the value over £500,000 so they could classify it as serious. My wife told me directly, "Don't plead guilty just to protect me." But they had me cornered. I knew they'd offer a deal, and I knew I'd have to take it. At the same time, my mom was battling cancer, and I was a wreck. Instead of stepping up, I was spiraling, drinking heavily when I should have been there for her. The guilt was eating me alive. That's when I knew I had to get out of the EDL. I'd met the Quilliam Foundation while filming a doc, and Maajid Nawaz had said to hit him up if I ever wanted out. So I did. They saw the PR potential. Tommy Robinson leaves EDL, and in return, they agreed to cover my family's bills if I got locked up again. For the first time in years, I put my family first. I was still going to fight the big charge, but right before trial, they offered a new deal. Drop it down to the initial $24,000 loan. My solicitor said I'd probably get a suspended sentence. I told them I'd take it, but only if they agreed I hadn't financially benefited, so they couldn't come after me later. They agreed. In court, the Archbishop of Canterbury's office even sent a letter asking for leniency. A Quilliam rep showed up to vouch for me. And the judge still hit me with 18 months. Yeah, that didn't feel rigged at all. While I was inside, my mom had a 12-hour operation. The odds were 50-50. I sat in my cell, waiting for the chaplain to tell me if she made it. He never came. Night passed. I was breaking. Next morning, that little cell window slid open, and he just said, "Your mom's all right." I never saw her the whole time I was inside, but at least she was still here. I thought I was done, served my time, left the EDL, tried to move on, but the police weren't done with me. The deal I made? They ripped it up, said they were coming after me for £315,000. Why? Because they could. They took everything, our savings, our assets, because I'd loaned my brother-in-law 20 grand. The whole thing was a joke, a blatant personal vendetta. But that was my life. The system wasn't just trying to punish me, they were trying to erase me. And yet, here I still am.